winter. The Partygate report should be published today. We'll be looking at that. Return to the dark days of the 70s. Boris Johnson scolding his cabinet yesterday because none of them lived through the 70s. By the way, I did, albeit I was considerably younger then. And what inflation actually meant. And in some instances, of course, it meant more strikes. And that's what we're looking at the railways. That strike vote yesterday, absolutely overwhelmingly in favour of strike action, which could mean, as of the summer, the railways are restricted to running just 12 hours a day, 7 a.m. through 7 p.m.
Railway workers have just voted for the biggest strike in modern history. MLBC's Rachel Venables at Charing Cross Station.
In other news,
a 14-year-old boy found guilty of the murder of a 12-year-old girl. Ava's family cheered in court while the 14-year-old boy sunk his head into his hands. MLBC's Liam Gossing in Liverpool.
Plus, the England football manager Gareth Southgate gives his view or version of why there are so many pitch invasions. Basically, it's the way the country is at the moment, and we haven't got strict enough parenting.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast. Call 0345 6060 973. Text 84850. Nick Ferrari at breakfast on LBC.
As you've already heard on the LBC news bulletins, 19 children. 19. Let's let that number just hang in the air for a second or three. 2 adults died in a shooting at a primary school in southern Texas. The 18-year-old gunman opening fire at a school in the city of Uvalde before he was killed by law enforcement officers. This is a mix of some of the US networks, including Fox, NBC, CNN, and others.
Good afternoon, and we're coming on the air because of an awful scene playing out today in Texas. An active shooter for a time at an elementary school in Uvalde, Texas. This is about 80 miles outside of San Antonio.
We are following the breaking news out of Texas, and it is heartbreaking news. 14 students.
In 300 yards, keep right to continue towards Tons Lane, A355.
School in Uvalde, Texas, just west of San Antonio.
Tonight, another mass shooting in America, this time at an elementary school where at least 14 children and a teacher were killed. On the brink of summer vacation, lives in the small town of Uvalde, Texas have changed forever. This is the deadliest
Keep right.
since the Stoneman Douglas High School shooting in Parkland, Florida in 2018.
This is NBC Nightly News with Lester Holt.
Good evening. He shot and killed horrifically, incomprehensibly. Those are the words of Texas Governor Greg Abbott tonight after one of the deadliest school shootings in U.S. history.
Hello, I'm Steve Eager. The news out of Uvalde, Texas is awful. 19 children murdered at their elementary school 2 days before summer vacation. The school is specifically for 2nd, 3rd, and 4th graders. 2 teachers are also dead.
The local state governor, Texas Governor Greg Abbott, spoke overnight.
What happened in Uvalde is a horrific tragedy that cannot be tolerated in the state of Texas. And there is swift action being taken by local law enforcement as well as the Texas Department of Public Safety. They obviously now know who the shooter was, and the shooter is no longer alive. Let me give you some details, and then I'll give you a summation about that. The shooter was Salvador Romas, an 18-year-old male who resided in Uvalde. It's believed that he abandoned his vehicle and entered into the Robb Elementary School in Uvalde with a handgun.
In a quarter of a mile, at the roundabout, take the first exit onto the M4 slip road to London Heathrow Airport.
14 students and killed a teacher.
Of course, those numbers have increased. The horrific affair was addressed by the US President Joe Biden, also speaking overnight, with echoes, it has to be said. You'll hear of President Obama, of course, when he had to handle the Sandy Hook shootings.
As a nation, we have to ask, when in God's name are we going to stand up to the gun lobby? When in God's name we do what we all know in our gut needs to be done? It's been 340.
In a quarter of a mile, merge onto M4.
48 days. 10 years since I stood up at a high school in Connecticut, a grade school in Connecticut, where another gunman massacred 26 people, including 20 first graders at Sandy Hook Elementary School. Since then, there have been over 900 incidents of gunfires reported on school grounds. I am sick and tired of it. We have to act.
Responding to that, just to remind you, of course, for United for British listeners, that is a Democratic president. Here is a Republican senator in Texas, which of course is the state where the tragedy took place, Ted Cruz, responding.
Continue on M4 for 9 miles.
Trying to politicize it. You see Democrats and a lot of folks in the media whose immediate solution is to try to restrict the constitutional rights of law-abiding citizens. That doesn't work. It's not effective. It doesn't prevent crime. We know what does prevent crime, which is going after felons and fugitives and those with serious mental illness.
And let's hear a little from also the Connecticut Senator Chris Murphy, himself a Democrat, speaking to Congress. Just to remind you, Connecticut is the state in which the Sandy Hook Elementary School is. And of course that shooting goes back roughly 10 years.
What are we doing? What are we doing? It's days after a shooter walked into a grocery store to gun down African American patrons, we have another Sandy Hook on our hands. What are we doing? There have been more mass shootings than days in the year. Our kids are living in fear every single time they set foot in the classroom because they think they're going to be next. What are we doing? Why do you spend all this time running for the United States Senate? Why do you go through all the hassle of getting this job, of putting yourself in a position of authority? If your answer is that as this slaughter increases, as our kids run for their lives, we do nothing. What are we doing? Why are you here? If not to solve a problem as existential as this. This isn't inevitable. These kids weren't unlucky. This only happens in this country and nowhere else. Nowhere else do little kids go to school thinking that they might be shot that day.
Incredible power stuff from Chris Murphy. Let's go to the scene now and join Phil Anaya, who's reporter and anchor at KENS5 CBS San Antonio. What's the latest that we have on the story? What are we hearing from the authorities? Phil, good morning.
Good morning, Nick. As you mentioned at the top, we know that 19 students have been killed, 2 adults. We still know that there were others in the hospital, including a 66-year-old woman who's in critical condition, as well as a 10-year-old girl in critical condition. So it seems like throughout the day, the death toll has just gone up. You heard earlier when the governor spoke, it was 14. Then it jumped up to 18, 19, and we can only hope that these 2 in critical condition make it through. It's just been a tragic day. So many gut-wrenching elements throughout the day. One of the latest things that's been happening is, earlier parents who were lucky enough to have been reunited with their kids were told that news earlier, but there were a lot of parents down in Uvalde who were waiting for answers. And my colleague was at the Civic Center down there where they were having to get DNA samples from parents so they could match and identify kids who were killed. And that, DNA samples, it just kind of goes to show you what kind of carnage this monster created, and the types of weapons he was using,
Do we know anything more about, Phil, do we know anything more about the background of the gunman?
There's not been a whole lot of information out there other than he lived in the community. Uvalde is a small town of about 16,000 people. It's about 80 miles west of San Antonio, which is where I'm located. It's a very close-knit community, so I have no doubt a lot of people probably knew him or knew of him, and people who may not be directly impacted know somebody who's indirectly impacted.
It's a busy day for you. Thank you for carving out time to talk to us. Phil Anaya is reporter and anchor at KNS5 CBS San Antonio, giving us the latest 14 after 7. Let's get an overview now. just the situation in which the United States find itself waking up later today, I appreciate. Mika Mosbacher is a conservative commentator, also a Republican strategist based in Austin, which of course is in the same state of Texas, joins me now. Can I put to you something that Chris Murphy said, and maybe a response? This only happens in this country. Kids going to school fearing they get shot. Why is that? Good morning.
Sorry, the answer is, why is that? What are we doing about it? We keep kind of throwing the same ideas out, hoping something will manifest itself in a way that we feel more comfortable. But the actor Matthew McConaughey, who is from Uvalde, was just speaking. A lot of it is a call to action. We really need to drill down and find out what is happening in this country.
But why, Mika, why this, if I may put, love affair with weaponry and guns? Senator Murphy is correct. This doesn't happen anywhere else on the planet, and yet yours is one of the most advanced countries on the planet. Why?
Right, I agree. Why? So that's hence the call to action. Try to wake up and smell the roses. This bullying. Sorry. One of the things that's going on with the K through 12 students, and K is for kindergarten, is bullying. So bullying prevention is one way to keep these individuals from being marginalized, and that's a start. It's also, I want to note that it's age 18 and under, you cannot purchase a gun. So where are they getting these weapons?
Hold on a second. Lastly, Mika. So 18, you can buy a gun, but is Texas the state where you can't buy a beer? So this kid buys a gun, but he can't buy a beer? Is that right?
Well, yes, that is cool.
I know, it's a strange one. I wasn't saying that for a purpose of humor, I assure you. Okay, Mika Mosbacher, thank you. You're a conservative commentator. You are a Republican strategist. You are based in Austin, Texas, which is the same state, albeit it's in a mighty huge state. But then that is the reality, because I know in some states you can't get a beer till you're 21. So I'm assuming then in Texas you can buy a rifle, or every gun each. I'm no good on guns. You can buy a gun to shoot 19 kids, but you can't buy yourself a Coors Light. Explain. Quite incredible. With more on this coming up after the news, and of course coming back to UK stories. The Partygate report is to be released. Rail strikes are on the way, and the energy bills are going up to £2,800. Yes, it's tough listening. 7:16 OBC News headline. Simon Conway.
19 young children and 2 adults have been killed in a shooting at a primary school in Texas. There could be major disruption on Britain's railways over the coming months after workers voted to go on strike. And Sue Gray's full report into Partygate could finally be published later. LBC weather, cloud and rain in the west moving eastwards, a high of 19 degrees.
LBC Travel, I'm Joanne Webb. Long delays on the M25 clockwise to junction 5 at the M26. Now, it's following an accident, and for some time only one lane was open. Everything's back open now, but it's still very slow all the way back to junction 3 at the M20. Problems now on the North Circular Road, eastbound at the Cooks Ferry interchange. There's been an accident, and there are delays all the way back to the A10 at Edmonton. Also very busy on the South Circular Road both ways to Kew. That's all down to the roadworks. Also delays on the A1 both ways to Apex Corner, also because of the ongoing works. On the train, C2C services are delayed by about 20 minutes between Barking and Upminster, and also delays to and from Fenchurch Street.
LBC.
Because Plus Fibre is fast and reliable, you can live stream a spin class, download an exercise playlist, and track your progress on your smartwatch all at the same time. Jumping up, Jack. What's it up? What you can't do is rely on a bad connection to shut your trainer up. PlusNet Fibre, just $22.99 a month for 18 months plus a £65 reward.
In 2 miles, at junction 3, take the A312 exit to Harrow, Hayes.
Increase each March. New customers only. Reward can claim by email within 2 months. Terms apply.
Call Nick Ferrari now. 0345 6060 973 LBC.
Life is about sharing those magical moments, and food shouldn't be any different. For over 35 years, Marouche has been perfecting this experience with their delicious food, warm hospitality, and live entertainment. Authentic
broadband that can handle anything. And whatever you think that means, times it by a zillion and dip it in chocolate. Because this broadband connects 100 devices in your home. Search EE Full Fiber.
18.3% UK availability. Check coverage at ee.co.uk.
Heard about role models? They do amazing online courses for kids, but needed a bit of help from GoDaddy. One day the owner's like, word of mouth isn't cutting it. Why can't people find us online? Then his wife gets an idea. Why don't you use GoDaddy? They've got SEO tools which helps customers find us on searches. And he's like, really? So he gives it a go and he's like, wow, it's great. I should listen to you more often. And she goes, did you say something? All the help and tools you need to grow online. GoDaddy.
If your dentures or loose and missing teeth make it hard to eat or make you self-conscious about your smile, TDC Smile in a Day dental implants could be the solution for you.
I smile. I'm a lot more confident. I don't have to talk with my hand over my mouth. If I'd have known the outcome and how it would have changed me, I just wish I'd gone to TDC years ago.
Let TDC restore your teeth, your smile, and your confidence. Book your consultation. Visit smileinaday.co.uk or call TDC Holly Street on 0203 7334 986.
Nick Ferrari and Breakfast on LBC. Call 0345 6060 973.
20 after 7, you'll have your say about this horrific story in Texas. We are all across the domestic agenda of stories as well, I assure you as well. Partygate, the soaring costs, energy costs in October, and rail strikes possibly this summer. They'll run 12 hours a day, 7 a.m. through, as they say in the States, until 7 p.m. Front pages of the newspapers. I'll give you a couple of American ones. These are very much the heavy papers, though, that we're going to first, not the tabloidy ones, if there is such a word. The Wall Street Journal, gunman kills 19 children, 2 adults at Texas school. New York Times, similar sort of thing, at least 19 children shot dead at school. Now here in the UK, obviously the LBC website's been able to change up. First victim pictured in Texas primary school shooting, and this is we understand this is one of the teachers who lost their lives. Featured on LBC, and of course that will change throughout the course of the morning. Broadly speaking, for the front pages of the British newspapers, it came a little bit too late, around 10 p.m, 10:30 local time last night, so that wouldn't have run. What is, though, very much the theme is that the soaring energy costs which we are doing, and the suggestion that help is at last on the way for the Daily Mail rescue deal for cost of living in days. I wonder, heaven forfend, could it possibly come soon after the Sue Gray report? Might that just be political timing? The Daily Express, it's ready. Rishi's rescue plan for millions. The Guardian's Sunak's cost of living scramble, energy bills forecast to hit 2,800.
In a quarter of a mile at Junction 3, take the A312 exit to Harrow, Hayes.
£100. That, my friend, whatever your income, you're going to notice that. Windfall tax within days is a similar theme for the Daily Telegraph. Fuel bills climb by 800 is the I. Windfall tax will fund help.
Exit at Junction 3.
This theme going there is the front page of the Times. A related theme, the Financial Times, energy groups tumble as Sunak races to...
In a quarter of a mile at Cranford Parkway interchange, take the 4th exit onto the Parkway, A312.
In the Daily Mirror, they go to the parties that have been going on at number 10. The Metro all-nighter parties at number 10, and for the Daily Mirror, why did PM deny it? We knew parties broke the rules, and there's a picture that they claim was taken inside number 10 with bottles of drink and cakes and goodness knows what else. And a concerning story for the Duchess of Sussex, Meghan Markle, on the front page of the Sun newspaper. Meg, dad has major stroke. This is Meghan Markle's father, has suffered a massive stroke less than a week before he was due to visit Britain for the Queen's Jubilee. He fell in Mexico. He was rushed by emergency ambulance to hospitals. Now, before we pick up on calls, we've been looking back at... No, we've not got that ready. Okay, David is in Sheffield to talk about the shooting. David, what can you tell me?
Good morning, Nick. I'm really upset to hear this. Obviously, I'm a big fan of the US and in particular Texas. And I'm a gun owner in the UK. I've got a shotgun. And when I went through that process, people vetted me. I had a police officer came to my house for 2 or 3 hours, discussed where we're going to keep the gun, etc., etc. Quite a long process, but I didn't feel like it restricted my right to own a gun. They had permission to speak to my GP to make sure I've not got any issues, etc., etc. Why is that I can't get my head around why that is deemed to be taking away your right to bear arms. I don't think it is.
It's a different culture. Because it's a different culture. Bear in mind, Americans grew up believing that they had to effectively protect themselves as they tried to put the nation together, the right to bear arms. When I bought my first house in the United States, the guy I was bought from, we're living in New York, he showed me a couple of guns that he had. He just kept them in the wardrobe. I mean, it was quite an incredible culture there that would never happen here.
The other thing is, Nick, over there, I was over 50. And
Exit the roundabout onto the parkway.
Buying wine in a supermarket, but I could buy a semi-automatic weapon and ammunition.
Well, it looks like this kid, this vile gunman, is unable to buy himself a beer.
Continue on the parkway for 1 mile.
Whatever the kind of gun is that he's used, that is the absurdity. David, thank God we have the sort of rules that we'd have here. I don't see them ever, sadly, coming about in the US. They are too obsessed. David, thank you. John in Bromley, same subject. John, what do you want to say? Good morning. John, can you hear me? No, too slow. Let's move to other stories. We were talking a little bit earlier about the fact that we will be waiting on the Sue Gray report. This, as of course, there was a television documentary last night, and it seems we start to hear more about exactly the level of partying that went on inside Number 10. Let's turn to Harry Cole, who's political editor of The Sun. He has an interesting story about the cabinet meeting yesterday where Boris Johnson seemed to do a roll call of people's ages. But first, let's get Harry on exactly what we might find out later today. Are we learning a little bit more about the culture? What might we find out at some point through the course of today? Harry, good morning.
Morning, Nick. A bit of context from horrible news in America.
Yes, indeed.
Back to Westminster will once been navel gazing on Partygate. Finally, it might just be Sue Gray Day, if that's anything to really celebrate. The long-awaited Partygate report will finally be published, I suspect, in a couple of hours. It might just be hitting the Prime Minister's desk any moment now, really. And then we'll have to suspect we'll also see a very grovelling PM in the House of Commons this afternoon, taking a couple of hours of questions again on exactly what happened during lockdown in Westminster. But I hear we might even see a few more pictures in that report.
So I was going to ask you, what's the scuttlebutt, Harry? Is it looking bad?
Well, there's two camps on this. One, it's various enemies of the Prime Minister who may or may not have worked in Downing Street during that time, who are now determined to see him leave office, maybe well armed with lots of pictures that they intend on dripping out over the next few weeks, months and years. And actually there's a suggestion that perhaps the Prime Minister isn't that upset to see some of these pictures put in the report, gets them all out in one go. And
in a quarter of a mile, at Wagoners Roundabout, take the second exit and stay on the parkway, A312.
The headlines today, Harry, are saying that help is on the way, some kind of tax relief. Is that what you're picking up as well?
Yeah, I think they'll be quite keen to move the dial, so to speak. Could be as soon as Thursday for all sorts of windfall taxes on energy firms. Exactly how that's going to be split up is what we're all digging into. But I think there'll be some relief for hard-pressed consumers, hard-pressed energy bill payers, but also some sort of long-term investment to get bills down for a very long time in more wind, more nuclear, and all the things we've been hearing about from the Chancellor and from the Prime Minister over the last few months.
Lastly, you've got an exclusive in The Sun today. Why does the Prime Minister feel perhaps he's surrounded by young whippersnappers, Harry?
As a young whippersnapper born in the 80s myself, I think the Prime Minister...
Exit the roundabout onto the parkway. Continue on A312 for 1.5 miles.
Yesterday about how the country will never forgive them for returning to the high unemployment and soaring inflation, stagflation of the 1970s. And I think was greeted with a couple of blank faces around the table, and he realised that even as Chancellor, who's only 42, might not actually remember the 1970s. So perhaps the government might need a slightly better line explaining it to a large part of the population that don't remember the 3-day week, unions all out, and hopefully we won't see it again and have to live it again. But
I remember doing my homework by candlelight, Harry, before you were even thought of. Thank you, Harry Cole. You have a busy day ahead of you, political editor of The Sun. Just to point out really the only member of the cabinet, well, the only one who's over 60, the only one who really has working memory of those times, as opposed to being at school, is probably Nadine Dorries, the culture secretary, 65, so she will recall those days at least. 7:29. Gina's in Alnwick to talk about the shooting in Texas. Gina, America will never change its attitude to this. Why do you suppose that is? Gina? We having trouble with the phones or something? No, Gina. Okay. All right. Let's suspend that because we seem to be having issues with the phones. Coming up after the news, we will come to other domestic stories. The energy price cap could be going up to £2,800. Ofgem boss Jonathan Brearley.
This is uncertain. We are only part way through the price cap window, but we are expecting a price cap in October in the region of £2,800.
And we really are going back to those days in the 70s with strikes on the way. This overwhelming vote then by railway workers to take a strike, it could mean that as of the summer, your services on the railways nationally will be restricted to just 12 hours a day from 7 a.m. until 7 p.m. We'll have details on that. It's 7:30. You're listening to Breakfast with me, Nick Ferrari, here on LBC. The news is with Simon Conway.
A gunman has opened fire at an elementary school in Texas, killing 19 children and 2 adults. President Biden says he is sick and tired of mass shootings in America and says we have to act. There are fears of major disruption to rail services over the coming weeks after workers voted to go on strike over jobs, pay and conditions. The RMT union says it's the biggest endorsement for industrial action on the railways since privatisation in the 1990s. The takeover of Chelsea Football Club has received government approval. The Premier League side is being sold to a consortium led by Los Angeles Dodgers co-owner Todd Boehly. Culture Secretary Nadine Dorries says officials are satisfied the sale will not benefit Roman Abramovich or other sanctioned Russian individuals. LBC weather, cloud and rain in the west, moving eastwards, becoming more showery by the afternoon. A mix of sunny spells and scattered showers following, and a high of 19 degrees.
This is LBC.
Where you from? Join me, Lily Almond, on my new podcast, Where You From, where I speak to big names about the intent behind that question. Listen and subscribe on Global Player.
Right now at B&Q, get 25% off garden furniture, barbecues and outdoor play. That's 25% off, making the most of summer. So bring on the sunshine. Shop in-store at DIY.com or on the B&Q app. You can do it. Excludes products sold and shipped by verified sellers online, subject to availability in 6th of June.
If you or someone you know owned or leased a diesel vehicle between 2009 and 2020, you could be entitled to significant compensation. At My Diesel Claim, we're experts in handling these claims, and more than 600,000 people have already started their claim with us. Simply visit our site now to check your vehicle's eligibility instantly. It's free to sign up, and you can start your claim in seconds. Visit mydieselclaim.com and join thousands of others starting their claims today.
Our pledge is to put more money in the public's pocket.
In 300 yards, turn right onto Roslyn Avenue.
Cost of living crunch? Labara are here to help. 15 gigabytes of data, EU roaming included, and no annual price rises. All for just £10 a month. Labara. More for less. Change or cancel anytime. Rated excellent on Trustpilot. Get 50% off the first 3 months until